Hello there, my beautiful darlings. Welcome to Shantori's Comfort, where we talk fashion, beauty, and anything possibly related to the first two things that I just said. I feel like Betty Boop is a little engine that shoulda, coulda, woulda if she was given the opportunity to make a larger impact than she did. When I was a little girl, I recall seeing a lot of Betty Boop merchandise, specifically at Bed Bath & Beyond. I just realized how old I made myself sound, and I've only been an adult for 6 years. Technology really has aged Gen Z because some of us, not all of us, not the younger end, can remember what it's like to open the phone book, to look up the number, to call and order pizza. And yes, you actually had to call to order your food. There was no app, there was no website to order your food, okay? All the little kids are like, whoa, what? Phone book? What's that? The computer was used for Cool Math and Pop Tropica. Wait, since Gen Z is becoming the new adults, can Pop Tropica trend? Please let it trend. That would be so funny. I'm so sorry. I got way off topic. But just how I made myself sound like a fossil to Gen Alpha, I knew Betty Boop was old. And maybe it was Betty Boop's looks that were so appealing. She is reflective of that baby doll, jazzy, flirtatious aesthetic that I heavily associate with films like Moulin Rouge from 2001 and Burlesque from 2010. And if you have not seen Christina Aguilera's performance for Back to Basics, her Back to Basics album, oh my gosh, it's so good. I think it's her Australian show. Y'all, it is so good. I know off topic, but I just had to mention this. I didn't have to, but I wanted to. A lot of media before and during Betty Boop's creation was very risque and geared towards more adult audiences, which was not very appealing for many in the 1930s and has led to Betty having to adapt to the ever-changing social culture. So, if you're interested in learning more about the first human female character on screen, grab a snack, your favorite beverage, and your favorite beverage. That's such a funny word. Subscribe, and let's get into it. Created by cartoonist Max Fleischer and voiced by Margie Hines, Bonnie Poe, and Mae Castillo. Croissant. Sorry, that was stupid. Anyways, May also voiced Olive Oyl in Popeye as well as Minnie Mouse. Betty Boop first appeared as an anthropomorphic dog performing at a jazz club and was the love interest of the character Bimbo in the 1930 cartoon short Dizzy Dishes. The short was directed by Dave Fleischer and produced by Fleischer Studios and Paramount Pictures as a part of Paramount's Talk Tunes series. During this time, cartoons were played before a featured film as an opening act, and audiences loved Betty. So much so that in 1932, she was given her own series, no longer appearing as a dog, debuting her signature strapless dress, garter, and hoops. Fleischer Studios also produced the first Snow White in 1933, 4 years before Disney's version, and released Betty Boop and Poor Cinderella in 1934. Disney's Cinderella should have ran as fast as Betty when she left that ball. Betty Boop was an archetype of the jazz age culture during the Great Depression, and jazz originates from Black American culture, specifically from New Orleans, Louisiana, in the late 19th and early 20th century. One of the many famous acts during this time, and is believed to have been the inspiration of Betty Boop, is Esther Jones, aka Baby Esther. Baby Esther was a jazz singer from Harlem, New York, known for her boop style of singing and regularly performed at the Con Club in the 1920s. Sadly, not much else is known about her. PBS did an article about Esther being the possible inspiration for Betty Boop, and the grandson of Max Fleischer, Mark Fleischer, contacted them saying it was inaccurate. Now, from what I've read, there was no denial of cultural influence, and if there was, it's just reflective of the time the character was created, and I just want to say that they should have, because they got boop boop basooed. That same year, Betty's own series in 1932, American singer and actress Helen Kane filed a suit that made it all the way up to the New York Supreme Court against Max Fleischer, Fleischer Studios Inc., and Paramount Publics Co., claiming that Betty was a deliberate caricature of herself and that the word boop was originally hers. Baby Esther's manager Lou Walton testified, claiming in 1928 Kane had seen Jones's performance and developed her own rendition of the booping. But isn't that just called scatting? I'm pretty sure it's called scatting, right? Max Fleischer brought out the three women who had voiced Betty Boop. They testified that the inspiration stemmed from other figures. Witnesses also claimed to have heard Boops and Baby talk in nightclubs, cabarets, and vaudeville theaters before Kane became famous. Fleischer and Fleischer Studios brought out the recordings of Jones's vocal performances, which lost Helen Kane the case. Other than inside the courtroom, Fleischer Studios does not acknowledge Baby Esther's influence in Betty Boop. In my opinion, and from what I see, Betty does look a lot like Helen Kane. It's like she does look a lot like her. And another possible visual inspiration of Betty is a woman named Clara Gordon Bow. I believe she possibly was an actress. I don't know. That's the only place I read this from is Wikipedia. So, and I remember growing up in elementary school that Wikipedia could not be trusted. So I didn't know where that came from. When was Wikipedia not okay to use as a source? I'm just glad Baby Esther got her flowers because not much is known about her and her career was very short-lived, just like Betty Boop's. With the many Hollywood 1920s scandals happening, audiences were demanding changes and censorship to films and TV shows that were being released, even going as far as to create their own organizations boycotting any film that did not meet their moral standards, leading Betty and other animation to being booped into censorship. The film industry was really pushing risque content, so much so that states had enacted their own film censorship laws as a way to combat the public outrage over the 1920 scandals. And like I had mentioned in the previous chapter, groups were boycotting films that did not meet their moral standards. 1929 was also the beginning of the Great Depression, so there was a longing for conservative values. So to protect the interests of filmmakers, satisfy the public, and to avoid government intervention, the Motion Pictures Producers and Distributors of America, or NPPDA, was formed. The NPPDA created a list of don'ts and be carefuls in 1927 to regulate and avoid further censorship. The Motion Picture Production Code guidelines were nicknamed Hays Code after Will H. Hays, who was the president of the NPPDA, and these guidelines were followed from the early 1930s to the late 1960s. Well, it was adopted in 1922 and was loosely enforced until 1934 when it went into full effect. Films needed to have the approval of the Production Code Administration, or PCA for short, before they were able to release. And they were examined by the head of the PCA, Joseph I. Breen. Animated shows like Betty Boop had to tone down their character design and stories of each episode. And a specific one in particular was hilarious. And it was an episode where Betty was helping Coco the clown. I think that's the clown's name, Coco. And he had I think it was a cavity or something? And she pulled out his tooth. And of course, she didn't just yank it out without any special anything, right? She gave him some laughing gas, and she turned it up so high that they both started getting high off of the laughing gas. And oh my god, and the gas started going out into the street and started getting all the objects high. It was so funny. And it just reminded me of that one scene from Little Shop of Horrors where the dentist actually got high and died from that. But yeah, it was amazing and I loved it. Instead of being depicted escaping risque situations, Betty is now a housewife or a working girl because in the 1930s, this is also the time when more women were entering the workforce. Claudia Golden of Harvard University noted that employed married women rose to 23% in 1930 and up to 47% in 1950 from the 8% in 1890. Betty Boop began to fall out of favor with mainstream audiences, which I'm sure was majority male. Fleischer Studios was then acquired and rebranded by Paramount, and they decided to end the production of the cartoon in 1939. Paramount actually sold most of its pre-1950 shorts to a TV syndicator. Which one? I have no idea. But Betty has lived on through mostly merchandise, like how I discovered her, as well as with a few cameos like in CBS's 1985 TV special, The Romance of Betty Boop, and famous to me, in the 1988 film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And to no surprise, Betty was a waitress in a jazz club. I got so excited when I saw Betty. I was like, oh my god, Betty Boop! Like I watched the show. I never watched the show, guys. Now, Betty was and is a famous risque figure, especially during her time of creation during the Great Depression. But you know what? She also served as a strong working girl after the Hays Code was enforced, being depicted as a circus performer, a race car driver, and presidential candidate. Betty Boop walked so that Barbie could speed walk and then run. Because, Betty didn't last that long. Animation historian Ray Porter stated in an article for History that Betty was never intended to be a continuing character. The public embraces her because she reminded them of the carefree days of the 1920s. Now, I conclude from my own research, and you can let me know in the comments below if you agree or not and your thoughts and opinions about this, that because of Hays Code, we have our film and TV rating system as well as animation being seen as mostly for kids. Artists' creativity is really tested by the limitations of Hays Code. And fun fact to learn is that in a 1950 court case, it was decided that free speech did not cover motion pictures because it was seen mostly as a business instead of an art form. And this verdict was not overruled until 1952 by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court also ruled a few years earlier in 1948 that studios owning their own theaters was a monopoly, forcing them to disband and allowing foreign films of any kind to be seen. Betty Boop's longevity has always been so fascinating to me because she hasn't been in much, and yet her design, her aesthetic is still being recreated by the younger generation on social media to this day. And I wonder if the people who currently own Betty have considered giving her another TV show, possibly. I don't know how they would include her iconic look because, the history behind it is not the most pleasant. And I don't know how they would even make that for today's audience, especially considering the fact that Betty was 16 at the time when they were putting her in all those not so pleasant situations. So, I don't know if they would do that, but it's just a thought. It's just a thought. But let me know down in the comments below how you have heard of Betty Boop. Please say that you saw her at Bed Bath & Beyond so I do not feel old. Be sure to subscribe and watch this video right here of Betty Boop's jazzy femme fatale co-worker, Jessica Rabbit. You all have a blessed rest of your day, and remember to find comfort in being yourself.